And may I very respectfully point out, Your Lordships, that even, even a slight apprehension uh, in the periphery of India can have serious implications. And your lordships are currently dealing with one such situation in Manipur, and I will not belabor that point further. Before I come to the Northeast, your lordship, I just wanted to
I'm
point.
sorry for the interruption. Kindly give me a minute indulgence. And I have instructions to say this. But we have to be very, very responsible in assisting your lordships, and we must understand the difference between temporary provision, which is Article 370, and special provisions with regard to other states, including Northeast. The central government has no intention to touch any part which gives special provisions to Northeast and other regions. This submission would have a very potential mischief, and therefore, Lord, I am interrupting and making it clear. Let us confine to a temporary provision for Jammu and Kashmir. Rest are special provisions, not temporary provisions. So there is no apprehension, and let us not try to create that apprehension. I am not putting that apprehension at rest on behalf of the central government.
Your Lordship, may I very respectfully point out, I was not referring to the current central government. I was referring to the principle at stake.
So why should we deal with anything in anticipation or in apprehension? We are dealing with a specific provision, namely Article 370, which was applicable or is applicable according to you to the Jammu and Kashmir. We don't have to really expand this ambit on what the impact of our interpretation would have on other provisions of the Constitution.
Your Lordship, may I respectfully point out.
There is also another thing in what he says. This is the special provision, 370. 370 is stated to be a temporary provision. Of course, the councils have argued it is not temporary, that it was temporary in the context of a assembly. All those aspects are the interpretation of 370. I think touching 371 is something which we should get into in these proceedings.
And particularly once, as a constitutional principle, the Solicitor General is informing us that the government has no such intent. Why should we apprehend that, this is what the government is about to do in other parts of the country?
Your Lordship,
that's not before us, and I don't think we should really enter into that terrain at all.
Your Lordship, may I respectfully point out, you're absolutely correct, with regard to the
broader impact of, say, the abrogation of a state into a union territory. What could be the fallout in other parts of the country? Certainly that point has been made, that's present to our mind. But let's not now place specific focus on Northeast, that you will probably do this in the Northeast. I think the apprehension is allayed by the statement which has been made on behalf of the government. And beyond what was argued by the petitioners, namely that if you permit, and that is independent of Jammu and Kashmir, if you permit the abrogation of a state and its constitution into a union territory, why would it be confined only to Jammu and Kashmir? That point has been made. We have made a note of that. We will be hearing on the response to them.
Tiwari, just one. I think as far as the other parts of Northeast is concerned, because your written submission specifically talk about it. That, in view of the statement made, I don't think we are required to go into all that. One. Number two, as far as Article 3 and 4, whatever is there, if you have any submissions to make, just confine to those articles, the horse Northeast, that's possible. But otherwise, we are dealing with only 370 and Article 3 and 4.
Your Lordship, I am extremely cognizant of what has fallen from your Lordships. And I will try and confine my arguments to the constitutional interpretation, primarily because you were absolutely correct that while Article 370 has a subheading as a temporary or transitional provision, 371 and the rest of the provisions also have a subheading as a special provision. So therefore, I am not trying to equate temporary, which has been argued as permanent, with special provisions, but the underlying principle of autonomy, which runs through 370 and 371, is the same. And that's the limited argument that I want to make. So, Your Lordship, before I go on to the arguments with regard to the Article 3 and 4, may I very respectfully point out that
Mr. Tiwari, there are even certain special provisions with respect to state of Maharashtra also. State of Maharashtra and Gujarat. Why should, what we are interpreting is only 370.
Your Lordship is absolutely correct, and that's why.
See, the interventionist. Basis is intervention, only on one principle. That is 371A. Once we are not touching that, what does the interventionist have to say in this matter?
And Mr. Tiwari, ultimately, you have nothing to say on Article 370. So then why should we hear?
Your
you on
Lordship, may I
370?
just make a submission with regard to 370, and then, I will try and make a submission as your
But
Lord
there's
Justice
nothing that you
Khanna
have
said with
formulated
regard
in
to
your
Article
submissions
3
on
and 4.
370. You have not formulated anything in your submissions on 370.
Your Lordship, there is a submission on 370 in our written submissions.
Let us
In
read
fact,
that and then we can close on that.
619 to 623 of our written submissions, Your Lordship.
With respect to different territory, different. There is no conflict. 378, when
Your Lordship,
A is
may I
different,
speak?
370A is
Completely. Your Lordship, may I be? Your Lordship, may, Your Lordship, may I make a submission with regard to 370, and then I'll go on to Article 3 and 4, which we have formulated in our.
Mr. Tiwari, what we'll do is we'll close your IA by taking the statement of the Solicitor General on the record, and we'll just close the IA right now so that there's no ambiguity left in on the adjudication on the IA or in the position of the union government on any of the states in the Northeast.
Well, your Lordship, if your Lordships on the statement which has been given by the union would like to close the IA, I have absolutely no objection to it. But may I just make one submission with regard to 370 with your indulgence? And that.
Tiwari, that's not what the applicant has come for. Applicant has come with some other basis. Whatever apprehensions may be in the mind, which was not subject matter here, is also allayed by the statement. Why should we, in these 370 proceedings, take up, you yourself says it's a very sensitive area. Why should we take
we'll
up?
Just say that the applicant, urging their submissions through Mr. Manish Tiwari, Learned Counsel, has urged that apart from the provisions which are contained in Part 21 of the Constitution pertaining to the state of Jammu and Kashmir, there are special provisions in the Constitution governing the Northeast in
other
the
states
same
also.
part. No, his submission governing the Northeast in the same part. Full stop. Hence, it has been submitted that the interpretation which would be placed by this court on Article 370 may possibly impact upon the other provisions. Full stop. The Solicitor General has submitted on the specific instructions of the Union Government that the Union Government has absolutely no intent to touch or affect any of the special provisions applicable to the Northeast and to any other part of India. Full stop. Next. The reference to the Constitution bench is confined to the provisions of Article 370 of the Constitution. Full stop. There is no commonality of interest between the issues which are sought to be addressed by the intervener and the issues which have been raised in the reference to this constitution bench. Full stop. In any event, the statement which has been made on behalf of the union government would allay any apprehension in that regard. Full stop. We therefore close the IA, which shall stand disposed of.
Obliged, Your Lordship.
That's an addition to the well-settled principle that in constitutional adjudication, court will not frame a question that directly arise for adjudication. We will not stray into all those areas where court need not go into.
We'll just say, thank you.